As the U.S. deals with the COVID-19 pandemic, supply shortages, and rising tensions with China, the Air Force has to manage risks to its supply chain, which is essentially everything the department needs to maintain their weapons systems. Stephen Gray is the director of the 448th Supply Chain Management Wing at the Air Force Sustainment Center. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
So the 448th Supply Chain Management Wing supports not only the Air Force, but other services. You've got 50 countries for foreign military sales. Can you tell us what exactly your organization manages?
Sure. We manage complex aircraft parts that are used by all of our customers. And I'll give you an easy way to distinguish it. On aircraft, you have nuts, bolts, screws, and washers that you can throw away once they're used. Then you have very expensive radar, landing gear, wheels and brakes, structural parts, things like that. And what we do is we manage all that inventory for the Department of Defense, and then we also are responsible for the upkeep of that inventory. And it's the way we do that is through repair services, primarily through our organic depots, but also through the commercial industrial base.
So how disruptive has the pandemic been to your supply chains?
So it's caused us a couple of problems. With the suppliers, whether it's organic or our commercial suppliers, we've been subject to disruptions for 2 weeks, 1 week here or there. What that does is it creates air pockets in the supply chain where we just lose we have an interruption of the flow of material into our bases. The other thing is it's caused us to change our work posture. We've gone to almost a near full telework posture for my wing. We've got our people dispersed, working from home, and because of the great work the Air Force has done to keep us connected, we're able to do our wartime and peacetime mission in a dispersed environment. So the two real impacts of the COVID pandemic.
You know, as anyone knows who's trying to buy a new car, there's a shortage of semiconductors. Is that affecting the Air Force, I wonder, and DoD at large?
So to a degree, we'll see part problems depending on what happens to a supplier. But the thing that's unique about us, and I think a big benefit, is that we carry inventory to buffer against variability and disruptions. So if we do run into a problem with a supplier, we generally have a little bit of inventory to keep up with our demand, satisfy our customers, our bases, our depots, until we can recover that supplier.
I wonder if you have any special authorities. So let's say there is a lack of semiconductors and that, you know, you're going to need it. Are you able to go in and say, you know what, this is for the Defense Department, I'm taking it, the car industry is going to have to wait?
So there's a little bit of help that we get from the government. And I would just remind everyone that the parts that we're managing and that we use very different than car parts, right? Hard to find B-52 parts on the commercial market compared to something that you might buy in AutoZone, like a battery. But in select cases, the government has the ability to go to a vendor and say, we need priority over all the other work that you're doing for these particular platforms. And it's a very select few. The other opportunity that we have that helps us sometimes is we can go to a vendor and ask them to surge, to increase production, put additional shifts in their shops, hire additional manpower. It comes at a cost, but we do have the ability to go do that when we've found that there's a disruption, or let's say there's a contingency, we just need the support. We can go and ask for additional work.
What about components coming from China? Is there any, isn't that a risk to the supply chain?
Sure. There's risks all around, although I'll say not only are concerns about suppliers that are overseas, but not only in that country, but any country where we're dependent on a supply chain that is very long. Like you're seeing in the ports of Los Angeles, we can incur disruption just based on clogging up a supply chain. There's other things that could cause disruptions, a cyber attack, a weather problem, a strike. Those types of things all cause problems, and that creates gaps in that supply chain. So we're generally concerned with all suppliers and trying to build resiliency in the supply chain so we can avoid those types of problems. We've invested heavily in trying to understand where our risks are through a supply chain risk management program. We've built analytics that help us see and predict where we might run into problems. And then our approach is to try to mitigate that by creating additional sources or having a little bit of inventory to carry us through in case we run into a problem.
I was going to ask you about the use of technology to monitor and manage the supply chain.
Absolutely critical. And I'll say of all the business areas that you could look at, supply chain is probably one of the more advanced from an analytics and data perspective. We have tons and tons of data that we have at our disposal, able to use that to help make better decisions and identify vulnerabilities. The analytics has advanced so far. What we're able to do in data sciences and take advantage of all that capability really puts us well ahead of where we were even 5 to 10 years ago.
So what have you learned, Steve, from the pandemic that will allow you to be prepared for, I hate to say it, the next one, or what other, major events that can disrupt the supply chain?
Yep. So, prepared is the word, right? You want to be ready for those disruptions. And in the Department of Defense and the military, preparedness is our middle name, right? And so quite frankly, I like to tell people this: the pandemic has taught the rest of the world what we as supply chain professionals have dealt with for many years, right? In my entire career working in the government as a supply chain manager, we've dealt with these types of problems. It's just not news like it is today with the pandemic. So just like you're seeing problems in grocery stores where we don't have cleaners, we can't find bacon, you can't get whatever product you're looking for, we've always dealt with that. We have found two real key strategies help us out. One, have the ability to make the parts or repair the parts ourselves. That's why we have these large industrial complexes that serve us. They're fantastic in terms of technology and capability that they have. We're able to sustain the force organically with our own manpower and our own tooling. That's a big plus for us. The second part is through inventory. And again, we don't want volumes and piles of inventory, but we want to smartly buy the right amount of inventory and maintain it so that we can have it when it's needed. Really two of the biggest pieces that we do to make sure that we're resilient in the face of these disruptions.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us. Nice to have you on the program.
Thank you, ma'am. Anytime. Happy to talk.